How you all doing? I've always been interested by Mother Nature, volcanoes, hurricanes, natural events have always fascinated me. And I'd like to concentrate on volcanoes though today, as I felt more is needed on the subject after a brilliant video by Sylvie Ivanova, which I have to admit inspired me to make this video today. But the underlying question here is, are volcanoes a result of Mother Nature, or could they actually be man-made? I know it sounds absolutely crazy, but there is lots of evidence to suggest that they are. So, let's not waste any more time and get straight into it.
Oh, you can see some fumes too. Holy shit. I did not expect to see that. Okay, I can really feel the heat now. Oh, look at that. Jesus, that's cool. Let's go have a look over here. Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, that looks like it's burning alright. Okay, there's something over here that looks a little bit yellow, and I think that might be sulfur. Holy shit, that's cool. Sulfur.
Hundreds of miners work inside an active volcano here in Indonesia, battling toxic fumes all day long. They're mining sulfur, which locals call devil's gold.
What you just saw was a spoil tip in France, in the coal mining area of Terre St. Charles, and an active volcano in Indonesia. A spoil tip or a colliery spoil heap combusting and catching fire is not uncommon. It's actually the opposite. There are many still burning today, and Terre St. Charles is not unique in any way whatsoever. So this is a document from a science journal. I believe it is peer-reviewed, and it's called The Reclamation of Former Coal Mines and Steelworks, and it's edited by I.G. Richards, J.P. Palmer and P.A. Barrett. It's up on the screen now for you. I wanted to show you a couple of paragraphs from this document because it's one where I can find pictures and bits and pieces to show you some examples of when spoil tips do combust and how similar they are to volcanoes. I found finding examples quite difficult, and when I read a part of this document and what it says in it, it shouldn't be difficult to find footage of these places combusting, because it's so common. There should be lots of footage. So it is, you can find some, but it's not easy, and it makes you wonder, why is it hard to find? Are they trying to hide the connection between the two? Because if there was lots of footage on what happens when these spoil tips do combust, people might make the connection and start putting two and two together. Anyway, I'll read this document for you. It's chapter 7, I believe, which is colliery spoil heap combustion. So I'll read a little bit of the introduction and I'll get down to the bit that I really want to show you. So colliery spoil heap combustion is a common occurrence, particularly on older spoil heaps formed by loose tipping over the edge of the heap. At some sites, underground fires are known to have been burning continuously for several years. Little information is available on the current extent of spoil combustion, although in the main coal mining areas of Europe, several incidents are reported each year. Historically, the problem was much, much worse. It was estimated in 1967, for example, that of the 2,000 loose-tipped spoil heaps then owned by the United Kingdom National Coal Board, 15% were classified as burnt out and more than half as burning. So we get down to... It's only done a couple of pages, I believe. To some examples of underground combustion. So we've got Lanarkshire Steelworks, Scotland. During redevelopment of former steelworks site, an underground fire was eradicated which was known to have been burning for 45 years. The fire within colliery waste was causing problems with noxious fumes, subsidence of buildings, hard standings and railway sidings, and disruption of utility services. Early limited attempts to contain the fire were largely unsuccessful, and the fire continued to spread until 4.7 hectares of the site had at some stage been affected. During the reclamation works, the underground fire was treated by excavating the burning material and spreading it out to cool prior to compacting it in layers. But the example I really wanted to get down to was this one in Cologne, Ricourt, also in France. And this one is super interesting. So, in 1975, an accident occurred involving an explosion and avalanche of burning material. The spoil heap was started in 1913 and tipping continued until 1961. The tip was semicircular in shape with a radius at the base of 150 metres. The height was 96 metres and the slope angle was 32 to 36 degrees. Two villages were located close to the bottom of the spoil heap. Removal of the material from the spoil heap began in 1971, and at the time of the accident, material was being worked on 4 staggered levels. The incident took place after excessively heavy rain when an explosion occurred followed by a landslide which caused burning material with a temperature of approximately 800 Celsius to flow like lava onto the outskirts of the village below. And there are some pictures of this in the background. The cause of the accident is not known precisely, but at the time was thought to have been triggered by mining subsidence or by a pocket of gas disturbed by the excavation of the heap. It is not known whether the heap had been subject to underground combustion, but this seems likely to have been a contributory factor. So spoil heaps look like volcanoes, spit out toxic fumes like volcanoes, produce sulfur like volcanoes, and can also produce molten metal lava like volcanoes. Very interesting, isn't it? Very interesting.
Fireman, calling the fireman. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Fire. There's a mountain that's full of snow, but the flames, they're out of control. You can climb, but the top's too far. Trying to get high and touch the stars. Quite easy, it'll make you change your ways.
They tell us we have an inner core, an outer core, and then you've got the crust and the mantle, and obviously you've got the magma in the middle. and it rises to the surface, and eventually the pressure gets too much and it explodes, erupts. Now, I don't really want to get into whether this is correct or not, but I would question how they know this when the Kola super deep borehole in Russia. So this is the deepest hole that's ever been dug or drilled. Drilling began on the 24th of May 1970 using the EnjoyMusic 4E and later EnjoyMusic 1500 series drilling rig, and it became the deepest man-made hole in history in 1979. The 23 centimeters 9-inch diameter boreholes were drilled by branching from a central hole, which I'm assuming is that huge hole that they've dug in the picture. The deepest reached 12,262 meters, which is 40,230 feet, 7.619 miles. So, and that remains the record as of 2023. So my question with the magma and the crust and all these theories that they come out with, and there are quite a lot of theories that don't have any or have much evidence to back it up or concrete evidence, and are just accepted as fact. I won't go into and mention what those things are, but how do they know for sure that there is magma in the lower depths of the earth when they've only been down just over 7.5 miles? So if mining was something to do with why we have all these volcanoes, or ancient mining shall I say, surely we'd have some examples of mines being close to volcanoes. We have many. Like, I wanted to show you this particular one, and it's called Lihir Gold Mine in Papua New Guinea. Now, a few of you will probably be thinking, or maybe even looked up some of these spoil tip combustions and thought, well, these are nothing on the scale compared to what volcanoes can do. And what I'll say to that is, there are many different types of volcanoes, so you have different types of volcanoes depending on what the material is. Now, obviously, Lihir Gold Mine, which is in Papua New Guinea, is obviously mining gold. And the whole of this island is full of volcanoes. Some are inactive, some are still active. But, for example, if you had a situation where they were doing this in ancient times, some of you will know that things were a lot bigger back then. There's rumours of possible giants, that things were a lot bigger back then. I mean, I always say it links in with the trees. So if you do a little bit of research, you'll come to the conclusion that most forests, trees, woodlands are no more than 200 years old. So something must have happened that wiped all of this vegetation out. Now, if you get less oxygen, which would be the case because you don't have as many trees, or the trees are not as big, or they're a lot younger, you're going to have less oxygen. And what happens when you get less oxygen? Things are going to shrink, aren't they? So, was there a situation hundreds of years ago, centuries ago, where something happened, all these volcanoes stroke spoil tips were left untreated, and do you not think they would possibly go past the point of being able to excavate, or it's just too big, and the only way to deal with them would just be to let them burn out? It would be the only way. Since then, things have moved forward. They've learned how to deal with these things better, maybe do smaller piles, compact them better. Your jury's out, to be honest. There could be several different explanations, but for me, I think some of these, if you look at like some of the examples I've given you where these spoil tips are burning for like 40, 50, 60 years, does that again not tie in with the lifespan of volcanoes and how they spontaneously combust randomly after being supposedly dormant for hundreds of years? It would be a logical explanation, wouldn't it? This map that I showed you at the start, and this is all the active volcanoes all around the world, and like I've mentioned before, they explain it away as tectonic plates, etc, etc. But does the tectonic plate theory explanation make more sense than these being old mining spoil tips? I mean, look at where they are. So they're all down the side of South America, all away from populations, all down the side of North America. If you were hundreds of years ago, you were living in Britain, and you needed a place to dump all your mining waste, what would be the easiest thing to do? Dump it hundreds of miles north, randomly in the middle of the sea? And is this how Iceland has actually formed? I mean, it's no secret that Iceland is an island full of volcanoes. But what I'm trying to get at is, do the locations of these volcanoes make more sense of being mining waste, i.e. out of the way of populations on remote islands like Papua New Guinea, Hawaii? I mean, I'm not being funny. If these are active because of tectonic plates, what's Hawaii about then? That's right slap bang in the middle of a tectonic plate. How do you explain that one away? But would it be more logical that it would be right in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, out of the way of populations? Do you think that they possibly may have had like a massive disaster or something that made them think we've got to dump this mining waste well away from where we all live? You can probably see where I'm getting at here. At the end of the day, for me, all these locations make total sense if you were trying to place them away from where people live. Going back to Lihir gold mine in Papua New Guinea. So this island is full of volcanoes. If we take the official narrative as gospel, would you really want to be digging and mining, drilling into the ground, if the story of magma chambers underneath the ground is true? There's volcanoes all over this island. Are you telling me that little spot there is going to be definitely going to be safe to drill there, because there's definitely not going to be any magma there? Or could they know that they are just mining spoil heaps, and the only molten metal lava that you are going to come across would be inside these hills and not under the ground. And to be honest, this has literally just come to my head as I was editing the video. So Scotland, I don't know if many of you will know, I wasn't aware of it until 5 or 6 years ago, but Scotland, north of Scotland, so a lot of the north is inhabitable, and it's because the landscape was formed by volcanoes. They say millions of years ago, but who knows. So if I go back to what I just said about the Iceland volcanoes, could there be a situation where the north was being used to dump all the mining waste? They run out of space and thought, or maybe something happened, I don't know, and it does explain some of the buried stuff as well. And again, this is why I think a lot of people will ask, well, why is this hidden? Well, why would they even hide this? Because if people knew that, it may open up other doors for other things that have happened in history that they're not telling us. It's so many, like with many things, there's so many different layers. But could there be a situation where they run out of space in Scotland and thought, it's logical, isn't it? It is more logical than these tectonic plates. It don't even make sense anyway because they're all dotted around everywhere. So, yeah. And also as well, just to give you an idea, because this is what I found out about 5 or 6 years ago, and I was quite actually surprised. I didn't actually know it. But Ben Nevis was a volcano. And if I scroll over it now on Google Earth, it's pretty obvious that it was. The last thing I wanted to show you was a paragraph from a book called The Elements of Science and Art. And this book is super interesting. It's got so many different things in there which are, for me, it looks like a roundup of knowledge, technology, and very similar to what I believe you would do if you had just conquered the world and you were gathering up certain bits of information that were possibly lost. Anyway, I'll diverge. So on page 441, it says, how to make an artificial volcano. For this curious experiment, which enables us to assign a very probable cause for volcanoes, we are indebted to Lemery. Mix equal parts of pounded sulfur and iron filings, and having formed the whole into a paste with water, bury a quantity of it, 40 or 50 pounds, for example, at the depth of a foot below the surface of the earth. In 10 or 12 hours afterwards, if the weather be warm, the earth will swell up and burst, and flames will issue out, which will enlarge the aperture, scattering around a yellow and blackish dust. It is not impossible that what is seen here in miniature takes place on a grand scale in volcanoes, as it is well known that they always furnish an abundance of sulfur and also metallic substances.
Fireman, calling the fireman. Oh yeah, oh well, yeah. Fire. There's a mountain that's full of snow, but the flames, they're out of control.